Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, Perry. Thanks for joining me here today.
Good to be here, Govind. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
So, we talked a little bit about where paper napkin wisdom came from, and you gave us, I think, a great paper napkin um, to discuss, and I'd like to jump right into it. So it says on the napkin, it says grit equals passion plus perseverance. Why did you share that with me today?
So I'm a big fan of Angela Duckworth, who wrote the book on grit and did all the research behind it. I originally studied her based on work I'm doing with my grandchildren. And I'm actually in the process of writing a book on grandpa's wisdom, nurturing grit, smarts, and love in the next generation. And to me, the concept of grit is so life-changing and so important to both for ourselves and to instill in the next generation. I survived a catastrophic business failure and had to rebuild my life literally from zero at 55 years of age, something I never imagined doing. And going through those moments where I had to think about, was I going to be a greeter at the local Walmart, or was I going to be someone who reinvented their life? I opted to reinvent my life and start over. So that's kind of the genesis, how this all began.
It's
Does that
amazing.
make sense?
Yeah, it really does, and I think this is something that is really great for entrepreneurs and leaders to hear about more and more, that people are sharing their stories of failure, their catastrophic failures even. And I don't know what's changed about that. Maybe it's some of, I mean, Angela Duckworth's TED Talk on grit is phenomenal, obviously. So the narrative's changed, and Brene Brown has changed the narrative around being vulnerable, I think, as well. But let's talk about that failure, and mostly, what happened. How did it come about? Um, how did you apply this lesson coming out of that?
Sure. So we had a business that was very successful in the tech industry. PC Magazine did a roundup of products available in our category. They tested 17 products. We didn't even know the test was being conducted. Usually, when publications in the tech industry test products, they reach out to the manufacturers and they say, hey, we're conducting a test of product ABC. Could you send us one to test? And of course, every manufacturer puts the products through their labs and makes sure that they have the highest performing product possible, repack it as new and send it off to the labs to be tested at the publication. We had no such warning. They went to retail stores and actually purchased product off the retail shelf, which was quite admirable. And in the process of testing, they came to the conclusion that only 2 of the 17 devices they tested were worthy of their editor's choice distinction. Both of those happen to be ours.
Wow.
Our business exploded. We grew. This really speaks to the power of public relations, even though our PR team had no idea this article was happening. But the power of good press, let's say, in that our business grew by 400% in the 12 months following the publication of that article. Our phone system was so overloaded that calls were being diverted to another phone number outside of our building that happened to be an auto repair shop. And the fellow who owned the shop came over to our offices and said, I don't know what you guys are selling, but I really wish I was in your business. I've got people calling me every minute wanting to buy one. It was quite humorous. So, in any event, uh, at the high point, and this is an interesting thing, entrepreneurs always look for that moment of achievement when things are going great. That's when I get scared. I was a skier in my youth, and they used to tell me the only time you have to worry is when you think you're invincible at the start of the run. That's when you're going to break a bone, right?
Mhm.
And so we were at our high point, things were going great, and we had a disagreement with our banks. The banks shut us down, surrounded the building with armed guards, and I had 18 years of blood, sweat, and tears essentially evaporate before my eyes as the banks took control of our business. That was by far the darkest time.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I can relate. I mean, I've been in a situation where um, banks turn unfriendly, and that's not that's not a place that entrepreneurs recover from. It's not something that you can talk your way out of when that starts to happen, isn't it? I mean, it's dark. It's those are dark days.
Yes, they sure are. And we did everything possible to appease the banks. We offered to bring in an outside party to oversee our operation for them, that uh, they could have independent, essentially control of the business. They just simply wanted to seize the assets. It's that situation where you're in the unfortunate position of having more assets than you owe them, and they see the profit being greater and the risk being minimal for taking over your business and liquidating the assets rather than letting the business go forward, which was most unfortunate, especially for the category leader in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple really big things there. You talked about the high point is when I get scared, right? And you talked about your ski background as being part of the reason why you came to that realization or understanding, but applying it to the business point, let's go through, you know, because you obviously were scared, but the thing happened, right? So now you're in this situation and you're deciding between Walmart and reinvention, but let's be honest, Barry, your confidence is probably pretty low, right? You're not feeling great about yourself in that moment, especially since you were scared, right? You're saying that I was aware that something, there are things that I need to mitigate here, but it still got through me. Add to the narrative that you said you were 53. Is that what you said?
55, yes.
55. So you're 55. So let's talk, there's a whole bunch of stories there. I mean, I think that when we're in our 50s, I'm 52. I think we think by now our lives need to look a certain way, and maybe you even told yourself that it was looking a certain way as the category leader in a product line. Let's talk about that.
Yes, so life was great. We had a nice home in a lovely area. Our daughters were doing well, going to great universities, and life was good. I couldn't ask for better. And sure enough, things went south, and I had to rethink where I was at. Fortunately, I had a piece of sage advice from one of our attorneys. And I got to tell you, we work with more attorneys than I could possibly imagine. There were corporate attorneys, personal attorneys, and it was just horrendous. And one of the attorneys pulled my wife and myself aside and said, look, you need to take a walk on the beach every day. Clear your heads and just let this soak through. Let this experience work its way up. It's going to take a little bit of time. Just relax on the beach, take nice walks, and this too will pass, right? So that was, interestingly enough, such a simple little thing. Really helped us reset ourselves and think about what the future could be. And then the moment that was pivotal in the change, as we did that reset, was a group of the employees of the company that had just been taken over by the banks. Our key employees invited me out to brunch. And we sat down at this big table at a deli in Encino, California, Jerry's Deli, and they said, Perry, we want to do this again. We're with you. So that gave me the incentive and the motivation to start anew. And it wasn't easy. It took about a year of our figuring out what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, what infrastructure we were going to build. And that's, as an example, back in the days when NetSuite was first announced as a tool, and we made the decision to go cloud-based on our accounting and ERP software. And it was, I think it was like $99 a month at that time. And our last bill was, I think, $34,000 from NetSuite, to give you an idea of how that developed over time. But still, that was a very good choice that we were able to make because of the change in technology going to the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And, well worthwhile. So in any event, we started with a dream and a mission, the knowledge that we could pick the highest profit segment of the business that we were in and not make any of the mistakes we made in the past of being involved in commodity products, low margin products, and lower our cost basis. And through that, we were able to test products with our prospective customers. We created samples of products, mock-ups, and tested them at trade shows, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. And we're able to develop then products that met the needs of our customer set. Then the key was to achieve financing. And when you've been through a catastrophic business failure, achieving financing's not easy.
No.
And I talked to everyone I could, and it was great. I had a PowerPoint before we even had a company name. And we had a PowerPoint presentation we put together, and I sat with prospective folks to help us in the financing at Starbucks on Wilshire Boulevard and go through the PowerPoint. It was a lot of fun from the standpoint that we were selling a dream that hadn't yet fully blossomed into a working product line or sales or customers, but we had a dream. And we were talking to people about financing that dream. I had one fellow who said, you may not have credit and you may not be able to get credit on your own, but your customers all have great credit. So what I would recommend we do is we secure credit insurance on your customers, and any bank will finance the insured receivables because they're basically guaranteed payment.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what then took us to the next level. Now we knew we could build and ship products, build them, and finance those receivables.
That's great. That's a great story. So there's a lot there, though. Let's go back to how awesome it was that you got that advice from your lawyer, right? That the lawyer having the presence of mind to step out of their shoes and not give you legal advice, but remind you that the sun was going to come up tomorrow.
Yes.
And then you had better enjoy it with your wife. And you should enjoy that time together, is powerful, right? I mean, because otherwise it's pretty dark. And when you talk about grit being a function of passion, talk about how important it was to reignite that passion from a personal point of view, from a family point of view first, before you could go off and do the business stuff. I mean, the business stuff came second.
Without a doubt. I couldn't agree with you more. So in my mind, after this experience, what I've learned and what I now understand is that the business has to be secondary to your relationship with your wife and your children.
Powerful, right? I mean, because a lot of entrepreneurs are out there sacrificing. I'm doing this for them, but not with them.
Correct. And I have been so fortunate to have my wife and my children behind me 100% of the way. Now I consult to entrepreneurs looking to start companies, start new brands, develop new products. And when they run into trouble and they face difficulty, I remind them that the first thing they need to take care of is their marriage and their children, then the business. Because if you lose the business and you lose your marriage at the same time, your life becomes almost impossible to rebuild.
Yeah, and that's really so powerful. I mean, for me, I know family is so important, and it's always been. I mean, when I'm struggling for confidence, I only need to look at my wife, and she is my rock. I mean, she sees. There's that really. There's that scene where I think it's as good as it gets, and he says, I think the line is, I'm taking my pills again because I want to be a better me for you, right? And I think that she reminds me of who I really am in those moments when I'm weak. And I think that's what you're saying from a different perspective. You're saying that if that relationship is there, you've always got that. You never lose track of who you are.
Precisely. Govan, I tell people my wife is a force of nature. When things go bad, I've had health challenges, I've had business challenges. There's nobody I'd rather have at my side than my wife. She is so strong and so powerful and provides me the inner confidence and strength I need to get through it. So yes, I couldn't agree more.
So that passion starts at home for you, right? I mean, so that's number one, I think. The other your key executives coming and having breathed some life into that passion as well, and giving you some purpose to add to that as well. Having we can do this together, or I could do this for them. That was also, I think, powerful. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, and interesting also because you were 55 at the time, which is sort of like the Ray Kroc McDonald story, when they the scene in the movie where they go to the tennis court and they put things in different places, and they cut apart. He talks about, how come you just do burgers and fries? And they looked at the menu and said, well, the rest of it was just taking up space and not really doing anything. You had that opportunity to do that in your business, right? You sort of played the tennis court, made things more efficient, and cut away the things that were maybe distractions for you,
Precisely.
your team, and the business.
It's so nice to be able to start with a clean plate and only engage in those things that are going to get the highest return on investment.
So, but how can an entrepreneur? I mean, can entrepreneurs who are in the middle of something approach it from the same mindset? Like, if you've got a running business, is that something that they can add to their business? That sort of fresh plate, a fresh, clean
Sure.
slate approach. How would they do that? What's a place they could start?
So to me, the key is to sit down and analyze the business on perhaps a quarterly basis. Where are we getting our profit from? What's dragging us down? Where are we not achieving the market penetration we should be? What are the causes of our successes? What are the causes of our failures? Are they failures of ours to execute properly? Are they other causes outside of our control? And sometimes it's necessary to bring in outside folks who have none of the prejudices that you have. They're not breathing your own exhaust like we tend to do when
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
operating a business. We breathe so much of our own exhaust that we believe everything our public relations team is publishing, and that can be dangerous. So it's good to have fresh perspective, take a nice, clean, objective look, and then cut where necessary, add where necessary, invest in those areas that are getting the return, and shed those items and those areas that aren't giving you the return on the time and energy invested in capital.
Yeah, and capital. Let's talk about this seminal moment. The bank shows up with the military at your door. Um, I can only imagine how it would have felt. It felt like I was under siege, but I know I wasn't physically. It sounds like you actually were. The Before that, in your business before that, were you as open-minded to the counsel of others? Like, I mean, your attorney came to you with things to say, your key employees came to you with things to say, this investor came to you with some critical uh, perspectives. Were you always open-minded in harvesting this kind of feedback before, or did you do something different after? Like, did your approach change?
Great question. I must confess that I was a lot less open to outside input. And at that point, everything we were doing seemed to be working. We were under the impression everything we were doing was working.
The fumes smelt good.
Yes, exactly. And I was chased for interviews, and I spoke at industry events. I was, if you will, a thought leader in the industry at the time. I was on the board of directors of the Industry Trade Association. I felt like I was on top of the world. and I was the one giving advice to others, not listening to advice. Huge mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huge mistake.
So what did so when that happened? I mean, it sort of happened out of necessity, and you became open-minded because you had to be. But what's something you do since that time? Because you've gone on and you've reinvented yourself and had some more great success. So what do you do now, or through that next phase? What did you do to uh, remain open-minded, remain curious, remain a harvester of useful information?
Great question, Govind. I would have to say that one of the most important things I did, and it started almost at the exact same time that the business went in the toilet, was we formed an advisory peer group of executives in the tech industry. And here I was starting from zero, and I had these successful executives around me that gave me counsel. That was in the year 2000. We just had another dinner. We've been meeting up till COVID, we were meeting monthly for dinner, typically martinis and steaks. And at the beginning, it was 90% business, 10% personal. Now it's 10% business, 90% personal. That made a huge difference in that all of a sudden I had an advisory board, if you will, to help me start up the new business and guide me as I went along. And then about 7 years ago, I joined the UCLA Anderson CEO Forum, which is another peer advisory group, more formal. And I've been extremely active in that. And I can't recommend highly enough to the entrepreneurs that may be listening the necessity, I would say necessity, of being involved in some sort of peer group to provide that fresh perspective. People that don't have a vested interest. The problem with being an entrepreneur is if you talk to a customer or a vendor or an employee, they all have some sort of stake in your business, some sort of vested interest. In an advisory peer group, they don't have a dog in the fight. So they can give you much better guidance on not so much what to do. To me, far more important is what not to do.
Yeah, and maybe even ask you questions from a perspective that you may not have considered. They may not have the right answer, but they may be flummoxed by something totally different. I mean, they may not understand your business enough to get how brilliant you are, so they see something else. They see a landmine, they see a twist in the road that maybe wasn't apparent previously.
Yes,
Right?
very true. Fresh eyes are so important.
Now, the advisory peer groups that you chose were entrepreneurs. Now, sometimes, people don't have those available. Uh, is it possible? Is it possible to find them? Is it possible to make one? It sounds like you made one, right? Like this dinner group that you found some people and you said, "Hey, let's get together." And who doesn't like a good martini and a steak anyway, right?
Yeah,
So it's not a bad thing. You can always find one of these. Is really what I'm saying. You're never really alone.
correct. They're there, they're available, and I can't recommend them highly enough. And if there isn't one that you're able to find or one that you feel an affinity towards, and it's possible that your chemistry and their chemistry may not match.
Hmm.
That's very possible. If that's the case, I would encourage people to start one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice. Um, so let's sort of fast forward a little bit. I mean, we talked a lot about the peer group, the advisory group, and asking good questions of yourself, and this passion. Let's talk about perseverance a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, because building a business is hard. Uh, Getting back up after you've been shut out of your business uh, is impossibly hard for a lot of people. A lot of people simply go to very dark places and have a hard time returning from that. But it sounds like passion was the key to perseverance for you. Resilience sort of came from love. Am I wrong in sensing that?
No, I would agree with you 100%. And what happened is the harder it became, and I'll share with you that as I called some of our old customers and I spoke with some of our old customers, they were not always open to developing a new relationship with the new company. And especially from somebody that they had seen fail before. But what I quickly noticed is that the customers that were the most challenging to work with, I'll call them prospects, even though they were customers of the former company, they were prospects of the new company. The ones that were the most difficult were the smaller customers. The largest customers were perfectly fine. They were more sophisticated, they were more businesslike, they were less emotional, and they dealt out of logic, and they looked at the business opportunity more than anything else. What that meant is we were able to secure the largest accounts first, and then the smaller accounts came along.
It's interesting, right? Like when building business, a lot of people, I think, we talk about, hey, you got to get some early wins, you got to get some singles and doubles, but I think people misunderstand what a single and double is. I think people always think about the big whale as being a home run, but they're not necessarily a home run, right? They may be the single or double. They may be the easier sale because they're playing the same game as you are, right? They're not doing something. They're willing to look at, like you said, the business model, the strategy, the implementation, and those things. They're able to be less emotional about it, and maybe the home run is sort of like this fantasy that occurs in an entrepreneur's mind, where there's a magic wand that takes care of all my problems. That doesn't exist. It's always singles and doubles, and the singles and doubles might not be what we think they are. Was that the case for you?
So yes, definitely the case in that the success took longer than I had projected, more energy than I had projected.
Even the second time, right?
Oh, without a doubt, more so the second time. From the standpoint that if I knew how difficult and challenging it was going to be, and how much rejection I was going to face, and how many sleepless nights I was going to have, I probably wouldn't have had the courage to start over. It was only from the standpoint that I was stupid enough not to know all that, that I was able to get through it, in that I didn't see another option. I didn't consider a life where I would have a minimum wage job or something of that sort to continue as a viable option. I wasn't going to go there. I Sorry about the helicopter.
Couldn't
I
hear it.
had to. Good. Okay. I had to go forward. I had to succeed, and that was the passion that drove me. The knowledge that failure was not an option.
And doesn't that happen? So I think what's really interesting, having gone through my share of darkness, I would say that it doesn't happen in one moment. Like, it doesn't happen, you don't go from barely getting out of bed in the morning to running to the next opportunity, or running to the next no, or going from failure to failure without a loss of excitement, or whatever the quote is. But it actually is smaller than that. It's just, okay, one more time. I can do this step, and I'm going to do this step, and then, okay, I'm going to do another step, and I'm going to do another step. And Kobe Bryant's got this great thing about how failure doesn't exist. And
Yes.
it's a fantasy, it's a fiction. And the fantasy and fiction is that, exists as much on the other side. We believe that failure exists because we believe that the romantic story, the happening ending, exists as well. But just as Prince Charming and Snow White needed to figure out who's going to get groceries the next day, there is no such thing as a happy ending, right? I mean, it's always the next thing.
It's a journey. It's a happy journey.
Yeah.
Life is good. And the bad times only add contrast to help us enjoy the good times more.
Yeah, and it's just there. It's just is. It's just what it is.
Right. So we have to enjoy the ride and not look for the destination as much as we look for the ride.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why there's so much about the journey. So let's go full circle back to the paper napkin. When you shared that with me, um, I think grit is misunderstood, because it's earned. It's the grit. The grit is just the traction to be able to do it again and again, and it's the everyday. It's not glamorous necessarily. It's just the dot that you pick up today.
I would fully agree that grit in and of itself is not glamorous. The byproduct of grit is the achievement that we get for staying with it and being passionate about it, persevering over time, handling those rejections. That end benefit more than pays for the pain and suffering that goes into the perseverance and the passion.
Yeah, and it always well said. And I think it also always feels good when you didn't quit. There's no regret that I could have done one more day.
How true.
Right. And there's a strong value in that. Is that part of the message that you want to give to your grandchildren now? Is that part of the work that you're doing in this book, that you're working on for and with them?
Yes. And it's so interesting. We follow not only Angela Duckworth and Grit, and the older grandchildren have actually read the book, studied the book, but also Carol Dweck on growth mindset. And the grandchildren are nurtured in a way and mentored in a way by me to understand that there's the romanticism about being an entrepreneur is perhaps overdone, right? I would submit that a lot of the folks that say they want to be entrepreneurs want the trappings of being an entrepreneur, but aren't willing to pay the price in terms of the perseverance and the passion necessary, the not giving up, the staying with it. And if you're not ready for that challenge, maybe being an entrepreneur isn't for you.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of rejection.
Exactly. And I want my grandchildren to be aware of the fact that while they romanticize the fact that I've been a CEO of multiple companies and had excellent success and life is good and we live in a great city and a great place and everything is wonderful, that it came at a price and it wasn't guaranteed, and that there was failure that led to the success. So very important for the grandchildren to be aware of that, and that entrepreneurism isn't for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's powerful. It's powerful. Um, our time today is done. I want to thank you, Perry, for I think you really explored these ideas with me, and I'm really grateful for your paper napkin. Thanks for joining me here today.
Govin, it's a pleasure being here, and congratulations on the rebirth of Paper Napkin and everything you're doing. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.